Hi, I brought Jimmy in today to have a chat with him about three different areas within our operation that Jimmy is invaluable for. One of those areas is the fact that when we've got a business that the business owner is looking to exit, but clearly is so ingrained within the business that we need to bring some other people in to be able to replace that exiting owner, then Jimmy is the person that provides us with that service. Secondly is on the sales side. So if we're looking to grow the business prior to exit, Jimmy can bring in the relevant people from a sales perspective, helps us then boost those sales figures. It again boosts the business. And the third one is the offshoring of administrative type staff that Jimmy can also provide that service with. So we'll be covering those 3 points. Over to you, Jimmy.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cheers, Rick.
Nice to see you, mate, and thanks for coming over.
No, great. Good to come in.
Cool. So obviously the first one. So when it comes down to a business owner, what we come across is that they're ingrained within it. Well, we've spoken about these time and time again. And so clearly we need to be able to, for them to exit the business. So what is it you can do to help that process?
Yeah, so, well, in a nutshell, get the right person in. But how do you do that? So it's really about understanding what areas of the business they really need to get covered off. A lot of the time, you start the process by they've got an idea in their head, and actually, if you ask a few clarifying questions, quite a different picture might emerge.
Yeah.
So, as I'm teaching years ago, but as you know, it's about understanding who else is in the organisation, what their strengths are. If you've got somebody who's ready to step up in an area, then actually maybe we don't need to go and recruit someone with that skill set. The more specific a skill set you can get, the better, really. If we start to dilute someone right across a few areas, you don't really want a 6 out of 10 in 5 areas. You'd really want an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 if you can get them, in maybe 2 or 3. So as an initial, it's about understanding what are they actually trying to achieve, and then how realistic is it. Then putting the constraints in of location, budget, and ultimately, here's what you want as the employer. Is that an attractive package for the people that meet that criteria? If it's not, what can we do to make that? How can we work it?
And it's negotiation, I suppose. It's an agreement, because clearly they want to exit.
Yeah.
For them to exit, they know that they're ingrained. They have to do something. And it's accepting that somebody else has to come, or an alteration within the organisation, like you said, has to take place. So, you can get pushbacks, clearly, because they just don't want that. But then it does get them to look actually at the exit in more detail, because they're thinking they're having to go, or they're wanting to go, and how and what they're leaving as their legacy behind them as they transition.
Yeah, typically the problems I come across, and this might be you, business owners, so check yourself on this one, is, yeah, but my business is totally different to everyone else's business, and only I can do this. If that's true, you haven't got a very good business. And as Rick will tell you, it's not worth a lot of money. Because out of 8 billion people on this planet, if you're the only person who can sell it, or deliver it, or do whatever it is you need to do, not that valuable and not that attractive to buy. And the reality is that's not true. And the good news, if we're all honest, is there are usually thousands of people who are better at actually doing that than we are. I think a key thing to focus in on is the specific behaviours you actually need. If you do that rather than the job title or the background, you start to realise that there are, hopefully, thousands broadly. And then when you start to put in that could do the job, and then when you start to put in, this is what we can afford to pay, this is the location they need to be. And one area that drives me mental is crucially overlooked, but the number one reason somebody looks good on paper and doesn't work out, statistically, by a long shot, is poor cultural fit.
All right.
And so what that really means in my world, when you boil it down, I'm conscious it could be attitude, values, culture, people call it different things, can be a bit woo-woo, is what 3 to 5 non-negotiable behaviours do you need this person to do?
You did that recently, I can remember now.
Yeah. So what does that mean? And the reality more often than not, when I've seen it, is if we're bringing somebody in a leadership role into an organisation with a view to exit, it's not they come in the door and the owners leave. So there is probably going to be what would you say, 12, 18 month
Yeah.
period where they're working together. If they drive you mental, it ain't going to work out. And that is the reality. So what we like to do is work with our clients and say, look, give us 3 to 5, or we can help you, behaviours. Let's define them. So let's not just use a keyword. So if you're going to use the word integrity, what does that specifically mean in a sentence? If they need to be creative, entrepreneurial, what does that actually mean in your world? Because the reality is, if we grab 100 people off the street and get them to define entrepreneurial or creativity or honest, we're probably going to have 30, 40, 50 different versions of that. So yeah, does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah, great. Thank you. And the second point we'll discuss today is also about the sales itself within the organisation. When a business is looking to exit and there's a growth strategy that's built in with that, it enables us to sort of look at that strategy and see how that can be strengthened. And that's when we'll call upon Jimmy to have a look at that strategy and to see what we can do within that and work together collectively to help the business owner get where they want to be within this business so they can exit knowing that they've achieved the best price possible. So just walk us through a bit more of that, Jimmy, will you please?
Yeah. So again, the most frequent amount of recruitment that we do is in the area of sales, helping people drive their sales forward. And that can be anything from people who are generating the leads, with that outbound telesales maybe, appointment setting, right the way through to making the sales or leading the team, sales director. Obviously, the more sales you've got, assuming you're making good profit, the more valuable your business is. Typically, in the world of privately owned businesses, the directors are still very much involved, or at least one of them, in the day-to-day sales, and they will likely still be very nearly, if not the biggest sales performer, bringing in the most amount of business, which is great, apart from when you disappear out of the business, it ain't worth that much. So how do we plug that gap? And it's about looking at what the strengths and weaknesses are of the team as it is. Again, typical story, I will hear 9 times out of 10 every week, yeah, but our business is different. If we think about sales specifically, what we're really saying there, for most businesses, nobody's going to buy anything from you without a good quality conversation. Likely, a number of good quality conversations. So really, if you take the detail out of what you're selling, most of us want credible, high integrity sales professionals to come work in our business that focus on the number of good quality conversations they can have each week with relevant people. And relevant people are either prospective clients or those advisors that can introduce you to those clients. If you focus on that, and the way that most people would succeed in selling the best is having one of those professionals that focuses on the client's problem. Become obsessed with what their problem is. Don't try and sell them something, understand what their challenges are and how you can support them. Looking at it from that lens, you don't necessarily need to get people only from your industry. Great if you can. But most people think, I need somebody from my industry. But the problem is, I don't like any of our competitors and the way that they do things. Right. Well, that's a challenge. Also, if you think about yourself as a sales professional, I'm working in this business, I'm doing really well, I get paid well, I've got a great pipeline of business that I've built, and I'm going to get paid on. Do I want to leave that for the same money and build it all again? Probably not. However, going back to what is the skill set you're looking for, you want to have good quality conversations with the right people, someone who can prove they can do that, they can go and build those conversations without leads. You don't need to get people from your industry. You can go out and pick people who are really strong based on their capability, their ability to work in the environment you need, the ability to fit your team, and their personal motivations aligning with what you need. You're much more likely to get people who perform in that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think since the COVID thing, that this online or working from home operation has obviously expanded upon that as well. It's brought a different approach can be used nowadays. I mean, the company we've been involved in with, were one we've just acquired. We should have done the legal, should have gone through today. That one alone is everybody working remote. It's a business that obviously has clearly functioned for 12 years doing that. And when it came to the pandemic, it was fine because that's how they rolled before. It didn't have an impact to them. So yeah, clearly it's an area of a business that it can be viewed from numerous angles in respect to sales.
Yeah, and that's a good point because when you think about sales and what most people are selling, generally we want our clients, whoever they may be, are in larger population areas. But if you look at the larger population areas across the UK, they're quite spread out. So wherever your business is based, you actually might be quite well served getting people in your team who are nowhere near your office. So we've got a client at the moment who are in Lincolnshire. But actually, when you look at some of the people that could be in their team and looking at building their sales teams, again, to add value to their business, even when you look somewhere as far afield as Glasgow, Glasgow's a really big city in terms of the UK. If you look at the population in the UK, I'm pretty sure it's in the top 5.
Right.
And then an hour up the road is Edinburgh, which is another big city.
Mm.
Equally, if you're looking at somebody in Manchester, you've got Liverpool on your doorstep. You're not a million miles away from West Yorkshire. You've got your Boltons and your Prestons and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of work in these regional places, particularly in the north. In the south, London skews quite a lot of it because it's so big that there's not many big cities in and around it. But as you come into the Midlands and up north, that strategy will serve you really well if you look for it.
Definitely, yeah. And the third one we're going to go over, which is the overseas. So this is where Jimmy can provide with an overseas administrative role. And the way it helps us out in businesses is that when we go in to look at the costings of the business, how can we reduce those costings? And if we are employing somebody in the UK side that is doing X, Y, Z for X amount of money, that type of service can be done elsewhere for a lesser amount of money. So can you just walk us through that, Jimmy? Do you do the initial assessment of what it is clearly you do the assessment, what is required and see if it can be done overseas? Or?
Yeah. So basically where this was born was 3 of our team, as we speak today, are based in the Philippines. Janine, who will have been with us 6 years next month, it's been a real key part of what we do, but it was just the way that we ran. And actually a client came to us who we've been working with, and they no longer could afford to try and grow their sales team, sales administration really, database cleaning, the way that they had done over the last sort of 15, 20 years, because it's just become too expensive to employ people to do it. So, and what's become apparent is, actually, if you haven't got consultative work, where you've got to problem solve with the client and do that, anything in that sphere is really well suited to using a global population. The team that we use is the Philippines because they're English speaking, and the US has been utilising outsourcing to that country for quite a few decades. So the population are used to it. How we particularly work with it is we recognise that we're trying to set up a win-win-win. So from a client's point of view, it might not even be that you're replacing people. It might be that you just can't get that resource in because you can't afford to get to £3,000 a month all in. But actually, if that cost is £1,300 and you can do that on a rolling 30-month basis, it suddenly becomes accessible. So we've got a team in the Philippines. How that works is we sit down with the client, we understand what their challenges are. Is it a department issue? So it might be like we need marketing. Or is it actually we've just got a capacity challenge, and it would be good if they could sit in a couple of departments, but really it is chasing information up, it is booking meetings, and it is researching bits and pieces, and then prompting to make sure the right things are done at the right times. Great. We'll then put that job advert together, promote it in the Philippines, the people apply, come through. The first instance is Janine reviews them, and then she will interview them, or maybe another member of our team will do that. Then, providing they get past that interview, they will record a 1-minute video, just explaining why they think they're a good fit for the job. We share that with the hiring manager, whoever that may be in the team. And then if that goes ahead and they're happy with that, we'll book an interview in. They go for an interview and they move forward and start working. We provide them with, so after 3 months of working successfully with the client, we pay for their medical insurance and make sure that their tax is taken care of in the Philippines with their accountant. So it's hopefully a win-win. Why it's a win for the consultant who's working over in the Philippines is they're typically around Manila. Manila, if you can believe it or not, is 20 million people. So it's 2.5 times the size of London, maybe a bit more. and the traffic is probably 2.5 times worse, if you can believe it.
I've been there. Yeah.
So Tori in our team, who used to work for a bank, a US bank in the Philippines, used to have to commute 3.5 hours a day. She now works from home in our team and basically gets a whole day of her life back every week. So that's why it's a win for her. So just trying to create a deal that works for the business, works for the consultant, and works for us because we make a small margin over the top of it. So
cool, great, thank you. Hopefully that gives you great insight into how we work with Jimmy and what he can offer to people that are looking to go down that path of exiting their business.